точка sta.
So you like turn-based games now? We've always liked turn-based video games, Coop. Not you, talking to the normies. It has been recently divulged that Expedition 33 cost 16 quid to produce and was made with 1.5 people. One of them being ex-Ubisoft. Square Enix must be witnessing that cookery with extreme jealousy. The expression too big to fail used to be quite common in the AAA video game industry. Now it's too big to make a decent game. My name is Couch Coop. Today we're going to be looking at the Chronicles of Valkyria. It's not called that, Coop. It's called Valkyria Chronicles. Now this came out in 2008 as a PS3 exclusive. I have a bit of a blind spot with PS3 exclusives. Other than Metal Gear 4 and that Gran Turismo 5 prologue. What the hell was that? I managed to borrow that massive black loaf for a couple of days, so I just hit Metal Gear and did some driving, embarrassingly. Valkyria is an ancient Norse word meaning tutor of the slain. There are some slight references to that mythology in the game. It does, however, wallow in this fictional European ally axis of evil setup, with the Imperials being what I think is a Reich equivalent. It's pretty cool. It has a beautiful watercolor aesthetic which is very much pushed in that intro. As you can see, this isn't a run-of-the-mill war story. This game has got crazy characters, that classic animation, dramatic villains, and also swings sort of almost to the supernatural. So this is not hard history by any stretch. That actually acts in its favour to me. This is intriguing and I want to see what sort of flashy, awesome stuff it's going to come up with. And it doesn't fail to disappoint. There's way too much love in it though. Relationships, romance and love. God damn it. What's that got to do with tanks? A beautifully classic Sega title screen there. This is very similar to the Dragon's Dogma system. You half expect it to say Valkyria Chronicle like that when you tap start. I think that was both a Sega and a Capcom thing. I am available for voiceover. Also, before we get into this, I've got to say a massive thank you because I put a Grand Theft Auto video out about local co-op. There's 66 billion Grand Theft Auto 6 videos just been released in the last week on the internet. So to get any engagement on that was a huge gift. Thank you very much. So the exact title of the game model is Tactical Role-Playing Game, which I feel is a massive undersell. It exists on the turn-based principle, but it adds some really amazing twists on it. Loads of it being in real time. There is no QTE though. Pretty sure we can all get over that. Excellent. It starts you off pretty mild, with only a handful of troops, no tank, and a massive front-end tutorial. This game does not rush telling you what it's all about. I do appreciate that. Loads of it is skippable if you know what's going on, but there's quite a lot of lengthy dialogue and cutscenes because there's also a massive amount of character establishment. I don't often embed myself with the storylines on JRPGs or action role-playing games in general. I'm kind of here for the gameplay. But this one really took me because it does approach some of the more distressing aspects of war and occupation and civilian casualties. This is not a fairy tale story by any stretch of the imagination, and I appreciated that. So I was signing into it quite a lot. You will start to despise the book. We'll get to the book in a second. So let's talk about that day to day. How does this game function minute to minute? Essentially, you control everybody in succession. There's no AI movement stuff done for you. You lock into the character you're going to move around, then you finish their turn and you move on to the next one. You can go to anybody you want, whenever you want, and you can also use action points twice on somebody if you want to move them twice. This is super handy if they get left in the lurch. You'll see this orange bar at the bottom of the screen. Essentially, this is my action time movement indicator. When I run that out, the character cannot move forward, and you can only fire or throw a grenade or do one aggressive thing in your turn. Every soldier type or class has its attributes and also differences in how big that orange bar is. On the front few missions, your platoon type is kind of locked and you can only sort of select what it's given you. You have a nice range, but it's once you get through that prologue and you get to the base and it offers you training and being able to advance the XPs of particular troops. There's a little bit of an XCOM thing going on here with named individuals having allocated XP that you've given them, and the rewards that come off the back of that are pretty cool. And that's one of the things that will get you immediately, is you will become attached to certain soldiers or characters. Edelweiss is the name of the tank, and that is also approached as a troop in itself with upgradable tracks, body, gun, everything. It's epic how much you can actually do to that vehicle. So once you're established a little bit with that campaign, you then go on to full-on battles within villages or whatever location is coming up within story. Now this is where it gets super awesome for me, because you have to select from your group of troops that you've been leveling up, and you have to think of a ratio. So you might need snipers, you might need a tank engineer to replenish the health of Edelweiss, you might want loads of scouts because the map's massive and you want to send them all out. Messing around with this is amazing. The game is also well aware that you're going to try to save skim, so it's in one whole mission or nothing. You have to restart it literally right from the first turn if you're going to go through it again, but that's okay because the experimentation is a lot of fun. It is a word, I just had to check that. How do you take damage? How does it work with this real-time system and it still being in a turn-based model? Basically, the enemies are locked in position when you're moving around in that real-time section of the game. You waltz in front of their eye line and they will be able to shoot at you, but it's a lessened stat because technically you're moving or you may be ducking into cover, but you still need to do things as quickly as possible because the longer you're sat in that real-time section, the more damage you could potentially soak up. The enemy's line of sight is highlighted by those lines coming off your character there. So to end a turn with loads of them pointing at you is not a good thing. You would have to then spend another action point to get them out of trouble. And that's why using that orange bar is so integral, because you could leave yourself completely exposed in the middle of town and have about 8 people shooting you on the start of that next turn. That totally makes sense, doesn't it? Let's talk tanks, because first off, I love the design of both Edelweiss and the enemy tanks. They're like early Matilda builds, right, from the end of the First World War, but Edelweiss itself has a sort of Panzer vibe, so there's references everywhere. I like the idea that it's completely separate canon, and they can really fly off the handle when it comes to the design of these things. I really like when Japanese studios take angles on Western or European culture. I think the Dark Souls series, particularly the Elden Ring, with that sword and sorcery medieval stuff mixed in with that amazing creativity, really works, and this is a great example of that.
ということは、そこのあなた。
It also forces you through the entirety of the enemy's turn and makes you watch what they're doing when things shuffle around. It has a fog of war system on the overhead map, meaning if you haven't identified a unit, it will remain as a question mark, a la Space Hulk. I love the comic book font on all the word noises, and that is not a bad idea, having you see all of their choices. The camera switches around, it's not as laborious as you would imagine, and it does give you that added perspective to what's going down on the battlefield. Leveled characters have these things called potentials, which are randomized essentially. The majority of them are really good and they kick in at the start of a turn. It might give you faster movement speed, a better cover, stats. Some of them are pretty weird and what they buff or nerf isn't too clear, but the sheer variety of them and the randomizer has you always surprised when they do actually turn up. I'll take some comments on what the buffs or nerfs are with this particular trait. death is actually handled a little more mildly than the aforementioned XCOM. You do have an opportunity to get a unit to a downed unit and then they will be evacuated. So if you've leveled someone up, if it's a very important character, they get taken away and you can respawn them in for a following battle and still get to level them back at the barracks. So it's not permadeath by any stretch. And that's pretty cool because you can take risks with strong characters that you've invested in. They're not going to disappear forever. Ammo for the special troops is also a thing, and for the tank, so you could technically run that out, have to refuel that at the base. You also need engineers to repair your tank, so there's a bit of resource management going. There's loads of big map allocation and working out who's going to spawn in where and how you're going to attack their opposing team. The campaign does a brilliant job of mixing up scenarios. You might have to rescue someone, you might be trapped in the middle of the map, there might be 2 entry points for the enemy, you are constantly kept guessing. And that brings me over to the boss fights. They are all massive, souped up versions of the standard tanks, and they're set piece bosses as well. Some of them have multiple cannons that need to be taken out. They're huge, they're like cruise ship size. They make the mouse tank look like a mouse. Also, shortest grenade throwing arc in video game history. There are 4 sequels to this game, and I owned and played the 3rd one, and a lot of it is just souped up, not really diluted, but I feel that this one is the original format, not too disturbed. It's kind of its purest form, and to have it remastered for the PlayStation 4 as well with that watercolour, there's not really anything like it out there, particularly on the turn-based tactics, military front, or leaning over to the JRPG, turn-based, story, big characters. All of this is in the one place. It's still retailing digitally for quite a steep price, I feel, for its age, but keep an eye out for a physical. There's a really nice sleeved version with an art book in it, and I suppose I ought to talk about the PlayStation 5 performance. Nothing major changes at all, probably just that standard PS4 spec it's running here. My name was of course Couch Coop, and I'll leave you with a Red Dead Redemption 2 outro. I will see you down there.